Friday, November 4th. No Jack McMullen. Welcome to the Just Baseball Show. I'm Peter Appel. That is Ryan Finkelstein. That is Aram Layton. Ryan, you sometimes like to refer to yourself as a Phillies hater with the Mets flag behind you. And a lot of people on TikTok like to refer to me as an Astros hater. But I feel like Aram is kind of the medium, right? Aram, you might just hate both teams. Is that true?
No, I just only hate the Marlins.
His own favorite team. So in this episode, we're going to be doing a recap of Game 5, as well as a little bit of preview of Game 6 and Game 7. Phillies' backs are against the wall at this point. Astros took a 3-2 series lead after winning the game yesterday 3-2 behind some really good pitching once again. But this time, Aram, we talked about it yesterday with Justin Verlander. It's funny, is he's got like a new career arc now. He had a 6.07 ERA in the World Series moving into this game, and then he gave them 5 innings, 1 run. It was a little bit bumpy here and there, but the slider was working much better. The overall command was working much better. And I know you were probably really happy to see Justin Verlander kind of move past that a little bit.
Absolutely, dude. I mean, we talked about how much we wanted to just see him put together a good outing. And look, was it perfect? No. But he gave them 5 innings of 1-run ball, which it was just one mistake that was hammered by Kyle Schwarber, who, he's going to catch some. That's just the way it is. But it's the World Series. You're going to have to battle. They're never going to come that easy unless you're Christian Javier with a, magic fastball. But I think what Verlander did here is just a testament to how much he really is trying to find a way. And you said it, right? It was the quote I literally picked for our Instagram account. But by the way, go follow us on Instagram at Just Baseball Fan or Just Baseball Show, Just Baseball Show.
Company guy.
Yeah, just a little plug right there. But you said, I feel like I can't imagine Justin Verlander not making the adjustment, right? And you kind of heard the post-game interviews where he's like, yeah, I saw them, hunting the fastball early, but then they changed, and just kind of feeling out his opponent here and feeling out how they're going to approach him. He's got to just kind of work around that, and he's just so smart that he found a way to be able to get these guys out. But there was a little bit of nibbling. There was a little bit of everything in between there. 4 walks isn't characteristic, but hell, you'll take this if you're the Astros.
Ryan, obviously, you've been on the show a bunch of times, managing editor over here at justbaseball.com. You get to watch your rival Phillies take on Justin Verlander. How have you been feeling this series? Like, we haven't been able to talk to you in the World Series so far. Like, how has this gone over for you as a Mets fan?
As a Mets fan, it's just a weird series to watch. The whole playoff run, I was rooting for the Phillies over the Braves, but since then, you're just kind of waiting for that magic run to end. You don't want to see a team of your division win the World Series. But then there's also all these former Mets on the team. So when Noah Syndergaard's pitching, I don't want to see him get lit up because I still like Noah. So it's definitely a weird watch. I'll say with Verlander in this game, you kind of feel like he's pushing up against the narrative. It's almost how we feel whenever Kershaw starts in the postseason, where you're like, okay, there's no way he's actually this bad in the World Series, or that this is something that should continue to happen. Yet there was the second inning when the bases were loaded, where you're thinking like, here we go again. Is this another Verlander start? And it was good to see him get through. And that was just one of those classic playoff games where, 1-run wins it here or there. And I mean, the Astros, I feel like just kind of had a stranglehold on it as far as it just never felt like they were quite going to give it up. And obviously great defense and bullpen, and, they pulled it out. And I kind of feel like now they are absolutely in the driver's seat here.
They are in the driver's seat, up 3-2, backs against the wall for the Phillies. We move into Game 6 and Game 7, which we will speak about in a little bit. But I want to talk about Noah Syndergaard for a second. How about Noah Syndergaard? The box score doesn't really reflect. I thought he pitched pretty well, guys. He threw 3 innings, 3 hits, 2 earned runs. He struck out 4 guys. And it was funny, what was taken over social media, I don't know if you guys saw this, DraftKings, they put out a graphic because Noah Syndergaard's strikeouts was at 2.5. And DraftKings put out a graphic says Noah Syndergaard has struck out 5.1 guys per 9 innings. Are you going to be betting on Noah Syndergaard's over 2.5 strikeouts? And our guy Krabs, who writes KBO over here at justbaseball.com, he said, this is malpractice. I am going to be all over the under. Like, that he's only going to be going 35 to 40 pitches. He's not going to go beyond the 3rd inning. And Krabs was right. He ended up only throwing 44 pitches, but we had a strikeout machine in Noah Syndergaard, and he only allowed 2 balls to be hit over 95 miles an hour. So, yes, he did give up the long ball to Jeremy Pena, who became the first rookie ever to hit a home run in the World Series. But overall, Syndergaard kept them in the game through his limited time. He was throwing 95 miles an hour. I was pretty impressed with Noah Syndergaard. I didn't think that this was Philly just handing it in and being like, well, it's Noah Syndergaard. It's all we got, because Zach Wheeler is still dealing with a little bit of forearm tightness, or at least that's what he went on the IL currently for. I want to just ask you guys both about Noah Syndergaard. Aram, we'll start with you.
Yeah, dude, I was really impressed. I saw that DraftKings prop and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, he's actually gonna get hammered tonight. Like that was like the last straw, right? I was like, okay, this is not gonna look good here. And here's the amazing thing about, and this is for bettors out there too, that feel like, oh, this is a can't miss prop. I'm going all in on one here. Of course, DraftKings knew that there was a good chance Syndergaard gets bounced early. That's why they gave that promotion. Here's the thing. All it takes is a guy having his slider working for him one day, and you can throw all of the bullshit stats out the window. Like today or yesterday, his slider was working and he got strikeouts. Like his velo was up a little bit and he was feeling himself. Sometimes it just happens that way. And I will say, you could tell that Syndergaard was just really excited for the opportunity. This is a guy that's had, you talk about career arcs, Peter. He was, looking like maybe the next big arm in the game, then ends up dealing with injuries. Now works his way back a little bit, but just hasn't been quite nearly close to what he once was on the trajectory to be. So to get the opportunity to get the ball in the World Series, I could imagine that he was relishing that and amped up, but he controlled that, and was able to use that adrenaline into snapping a sharper slider that was up a couple miles per hour and, spinning way more than it normally does. The fastball was up a little bit, like overall just looked better. You got beat by Jeremy Pena, who's beating everybody right now. But other than that, 4 strikeouts, no walks, gave them 3 strong innings. He gave them a shot. And at the end of the day, that's all you can really ask for in a game where you're just trying to get to Wheeler.
And if we're talking about odds currently, Jeremy Pena is plus 150 to win World Series MVP. Next best odds, Alex Bregman at plus 600. So right now, Jeremy Pena is the clear front runner. Ryan, you've been watching Noah Syndergaard for most of his career. Now you see him on the Phillies, the rival. How did you think he pitched?
Pretty well. There was basically the one pitch he hung to Pena. And other than that, I think every other pitch was pretty competitive. And I think, as we maybe get into the Wheeler conversation with Game 6, like the one thing you have to know about Noah at this point is he probably has one of the freshest arms like on that entire staff right now.
Yeah.
And so to have that fresh arm going into this start, I think he's able to kind of go on adrenaline. And he, at least at this point, even though he doesn't have the stuff he had when he was throwing, that pitch at Alcides Escobar's head as a Met 7 years ago, he still has now the veteran experience to know how to pitch and to get outs. And, he was able to get, what was it, 4 strikeouts in the first couple innings. He looked really strong. And ultimately, he was going to have a short leash. So as soon as he gave out that homer, like he was pulled, but I wouldn't have been surprised if they let him hang in there if he could have given them another inning or two, just based on how he was throwing the ball. But I also don't at all begrudge Thompson for pulling him as soon as he gives up the homer too.
Yeah. But I thought the best performance from the Phillies in Game 5 was Connor Brogdon.
Yeah.
But 2 innings, 5 strikeouts. That changeup, I feel like if you squint your eyes on him, it kind of looked like Devin Williams. Like that's how nasty this guy was. And he's been nasty the entire World Series so far. Like this is why when I was, we were talking about the Phillies bullpen and Aram, we were on the under. You guessed the game would end 3-1. I was like, I kind of think also 3-1, but I'm going to go with 3-2 and the game ended 3-2 because we have a lot of faith in the Phillies bullpen. And there was one decision, and sometimes we play Monday morning quarterback after something goes wrong.
Well, that's our job.
That's our job, literally, to make fun of decisions after the fact. Look how great we are. But I want to play Monday morning quarterback on a decision that ended up being okay. And that was Jose Alvarado pitching in the 6th inning against the top of the lineup, when in the game prior, he was the one to kind of blow it against that part of the lineup. And it wasn't just that part of the lineup. It was righty, righty, lefty, righty, lefty. And you have 2 lefties in Yordan Alvarez and Kyle Tucker. And while Jose Alvarado was able to get out Yordan has 0 issues against lefties. I was surprised they went to him instead of a guy like David Robertson, who then ended up pitching later in the game. But I would have expected Alvarado to go against a different part of the lineup that he hadn't faced, but it ended up working. So I wanted to play Monday morning quarterback on something that happened correctly. Aram, what did you think of that decision?
Yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting conversation and an interesting decision there. And I think it really shows Rob Thompson's confidence in Jose Alvarado, because we look at that spot of the game and, that's arguably, besides the ninth inning, or, maybe if they come back up around the eighth, that's probably one of the biggest sets of outs that you're going to have to get the rest of the way. And, he knows he still has Seranthony Dominguez. He knows he still has David Robertson, and they got to get there. I definitely was like, oh, here we go again. Jose Alvarado's coming in. But if you have your guy and you trust him, that's the spot to put him in. And I love that Rob Thompson sticks with his guys. I mean, if you're gonna win the World Series, it's because Jose Alvarado is pitching well out of the pen. I don't really see how they win the World Series without Alvarado and Seranthony Dominguez pitching well. Of course, when you get Connor Brogdon doing what he did, that helps a lot. But you need Alvarado to be that bullpen ace, and I think you got to give him that chance to bounce back, especially with the off day, and then you're going to go back to Houston. I like giving him the opportunity there, but absolutely, Peter, it was living on the edge. And again, I think you got to die on that hill with Jose Alvarado. So I like the boldness from Thompson.
Yeah, I like the boldness. I just thought to myself, when he came in, I feel like I'm going to be talking about this decision tomorrow. And he allowed 2 runners on base, but it ended up working out. But Ryan, there's been 2 guys in the Phillies lineup that have kind of been disappointing, in my opinion. Like, Kyle Schwarber's still doing his thing. He's hitting home runs, it feels like, every single game. Bryce Harper is still him, like the definition of him. Yeah. JT Realmuto is playing pretty well, and he's just so good behind the plate. That runner that he nabbed out at second on the throwdown, like he gives you so much value behind the plate. But 2 guys who don't give you any value in the field, and then also have not been hitting, is Rhys Hoskins, who in the World Series so far is hitting 169, and Nick Castellanos, who's hitting 197. While Castellanos is actually playing really well in right field, Hoskins had kind of a timely error, which allowed a run to score. Now, if he catches that ball cleanly, are they able to get him? I don't know. But what I did see is that he dropped the ball, and then at the plate, he's been kind of dropping the ball. Like, what have you seen from those 2 guys especially?
Well, first off, as someone who watched Lucas do the airmail throw to home, they might have been better off that Hoskins didn't field that ball cleanly, and at least they got it out in the play. But, honestly, I think if I look at these 2 teams, the big difference to me is the Astros, especially. We'll see if Gurriel comes back next game, but their 1 through 6 is tough at bats. Whereas the Phillies right now, Hoskins isn't hitting, but even when he was, it was that first 4. And then that drop off to have Castellanos protecting Harper. Why are you pitching to Harper? That's why he gets hit in the foot in the 9th inning. There's no reason, especially when the bases are empty, to attack Bryce Harper. If Nick Castellanos was the Reds Castellanos, so a year prior, maybe Harper sees a pitch to hit in that 9th inning. But because, Castellanos is just a shell of himself at this point, I'm going to attack him every single time. And ultimately, that could be the difference here, because, it certainly could happen again in game 6 where they pitch around Harper to get to Castellanos. And I don't know if you change up the lineup at this point to, give him better protection, but I think it kind of is what it is. And they're going to try to ride him until the wheels fall off, I guess.
It's funny, dude, because I was thinking the same thing. When Bryce Harper was up, I'm like, man, I would like to see him get some pitches to hit here. And he actually did get some pitches to hit, which is the craziest part. But it just had me thinking too, like if the count goes deep, you're in a 3-2 spot, you're going to make a pitcher's pitch and just go to Castellanos, right? You're not afraid to put Harper on. And that's the frustrating part about, what happens with this lineup after it tapers off. And I mean, Castellanos, man, I know he's made some decent plays in right field. And I will say though, like, I think they're deceptively average plays, but he gets just such a mediocre jump and is slow and makes a sliding catch on a ball that most guys catch in stride. And that's the other thing about him. I always say he runs like his shoes are 8 sizes too big, like the way that his feet just slap on the ground. I can't watch this guy hit anymore, man. Like first pitch, breaking ball. That's literally
he's swinging no matter what. He's swinging
no matter what. No approach. So easy to pick him apart. His swing is long. He's cheating. He doesn't give you much value anywhere else. And look, I don't want to pile on. It sucks. Like I know Castellanos wants to succeed, but it's just really frustrating to watch. And when you talk about Hoskins, like he's come up big in the postseason, but this is where you see the defense making the small difference, right? You have Chas McCormick making a potentially game-saving catch in center field while, Rhys Hoskins is booting a ball that would have been a tough play, but is booting a ball. Chas McCormick's play was tough. Hoskins booting a ball that could have ended up being the difference there with that one run. So it shows you the little things defensively that can end up being the difference. Look, going offense over defense in a lot of ways is why the Phillies are here, but it can work against you in certain spots too. My fascination now, and I tweeted this last night, is who's DH next year? And I don't know. We don't need to talk about this too much, but I just wanted to bring this point up because I think it's hilarious. Rhys Hoskins, Kyle Schwarber, and Nick Castellanos are in just a vicious battle to earn the 2023 DH job so they don't have to play in the field. Like, who is going to win it? Hoskins, no one probably considered it. He's horrible at first. Like, at some point, you got to consider him at the DH role. I think none of these guys want to play defense next year, and they're all trying their best to earn that DH spot for 2023.
And we're currently live on TikTok, and I kind of want to bring in some of these questions because a lot of them are good. This is one from Dylan Bates 3383. He says the big difference to me is consistency from the Astros in contrast to streaky bats of the Phillies. And I think that's best symbolized by the bottom of the lineup, right? Bryson Stott really has not showed up at the plate. Gene Segura had a 2-for-4 day yesterday, but besides that, hasn't really done much. And then Brandon Marsh, his OPS is great. I mean, it's at 700, but the batting average is at 184. Then you look at the bottom of the lineup for the Astros. Yuli Gurriel might be the best overall hitter in this series. Like, he has a 347 batting average with an 850 OPS. Like, outside of Bryce Harper, it's probably Yuli Gurriel or Jeremy Pena. Then you have David Hensley, like at the bottom, who just continues to put bat on ball. You have Chas McCormick, who's not only making web gem plays in the outfield, but he's also hitting 250. And even a guy like Martin Maldonado, who they only need to catch because of how good the Astros lineup is, but he's also hitting 250. So there's contributions from every single area of the Astros, whether that be the bullpen, whether that be the bottom of the lineup, whether that be the top of the lineup. Like Yordan Alvarez, this series is hitting 188, and the Astros are up 3-2 in the series. Like, Aram, when we were talking about predictions at the beginning of the series, you and Jack harped on outlasting, and that was something on TikTok where they didn't like for some reason. That's TikTok comments for some. They're like, how are they going to outlast the? But that's literally what they're doing at this point. Is just from top to bottom, whether bullpen, starting rotation, lineup, everything, they are just outlasting. They're not crushing the Phillies in any way, but they are just simply outlasting. Ryan, when you were looking at this series from the beginning, because you wrote a World Series preview over on our website at justbaseball.com, did you kind of see the same thing? Did you see the Astros just outlasting the Phillies kind of in every facet of the game?
Yeah, I actually had Astros in 6 as my prediction at the bottom there, so I feel pretty good about that right now. I think the exact wording I said was something along the lines of, I think the Phillies grab a couple, but ultimately run out of gas, and the Astros kind of, like you're saying, outlast them. And I think that's where we're at. I mean, that Astros bullpen is so good. All they have to do now, one of these next 2 games, is get a lead in the first 5 innings and hand it off to that pen. And we feel pretty confident that the Astros, between their defense with Jeremy Pena, McCormick making plays, and I mean, they're so good up the middle too. Good. It's look, I think we're heading towards what we all should expect. The best team is going to win the World Series, and it's the Astros.
You might just be right. And one more question that I want to come in. This is from Pop Up the Jams on TikTok. He really wants to know if we would change the lineup for the Phillies. Like, how, do you put Alec Boehm? Maybe he mentioned that. Do you put Alec Boehm behind Bryce Harper instead? I mean, Alec Boehm, maybe. Yeah, I would just saying, like, Alec Boehm.
I would say that's maybe the only tweak I'd make.
Yeah,
that's maybe one of the only tweaks. That's one of the only tweaks I'd probably make.
What if you just flip Hoskins and Harper? Bet Harper second with Real Muto behind him. At least you just get him more at bats and put Hoskins clean up.
I wouldn't mind that.
I don't hate that. At the very least, I would flip-flop Boehm and Castellanos. I mean, Boehm is giving you better ABs. Throw the numbers out. Just look at the ABs. It's not even close in terms of what they're giving you. But at the same time, I watched Alec Boehm get blown up by 3 consecutive fastballs and walk back to the dugout, which is one of the most demoralizing kind of ways to strike out. But it's the Astros bullpen. I feel much more confident when Alec Boehm is at the plate than when Nick Castellanos is at the plate. There's no doubt about that. But I don't hate the idea of moving Harper up. Like we talk about, the cleanup spot traditionally is the cleanup spot, right? You have the opportunity to drive in runs. Here's the thing. For the Phillies to score, they're not stringing together hits, man. Like it's going to have to come from the big fly. And the way to get the big fly is one swing. So you might as well get your best guy up there with the most opportunities to get that one swing. That's why you got Schwarber in the leadoff spot. Hoskins is struggling. He can still drive in runs. He's still a good, run producer. I don't hate that at all. Finks flip-flopping Harper and Hoskins. Yes, you have back-to-back lefties at the top. And that's the one thing, is you're going to face Framber now probably, right? And have back-to-back lefties. That's the challenge. But if you are facing a righty, I think it's a no-brainer there. But with the back-to-back lefties, I could see them probably going with the lineup as is, which, you've been riding this to where you're at. I think you got to kind of die on that ship. Like, no one thought they'd be here. They've ridden this exact formula to the World Series. They're 2 games away from a title, which is way further than anybody thought they'd be. As much as it seems like the odds are stacked against them, they're 2 games away from a World Series title. It's possible. I think you got to ride with what works. Only maybe minor change would be fucking get Castellanos in the 6th spot. Just do that.
Or bench him. No, you can't bench him because of how elite he is in right field, which is just the craziest
Those
thing.
Those sliding catches are mesmerizing.
And he's even giving you good routes, but it's funny. Every single time the ball's hit to him, I'm like, oh no. But he catches
it. You hold your fucking breath.
Yeah, he catches it. I want to shower some praise on the Astros before we move on to game 6, because Jose Altuve had a really, really good game in game 5. He went 2 for 4, 2 runs scored. He had that big time double where with the bobble in center field, he moved all the way to third base and had the triple, which kind of like, it was like, all right, this seems like the Astros are going to win the game as soon as he hit that ball. But they were putting up some graphs, right? Or charts, whatever, where Jose Altuve ranks in postseason history. And he's like with the greats at this point. I know Jose Altuve hasn't had the best postseason. He's actually had a terrible postseason by the numbers, but just when you need him, he just seems to come through. And maybe that was more prevalent in game 5 than it has been, but just over his career, like, Ryan, is Jose Altuve probably a first ballot Hall of Famer?
Probably. And I think it's funny how, getting all these cracks at it when you're on a good team just can make you one of the greatest postseason players ever. Part of it's just opportunity. Like, I think they were saying Bregman has the most RBIs ever from a third baseman in the World Series.
Most home runs too.
It's like, really? Like, Bregman's the greatest third baseman of all time in the playoffs, I guess. All right. That's what happens when you're in it every single year. But yeah, when you look at Altuve's career, I don't know where he is on hits, but what is he getting close to 2,000? Probably, I would guess, right? So, I mean, he's going to have the numbers, and he's going to have the World Series and all the stats, the All-Stars, the Gold Gloves, the Silver Sluggers. Like, if not a first ballot Hall of Famer, he's going to be a Hall of Famer with the resume he has.
And all I got to say is, I'm not patting myself on the back for this one, but Yordan Alvarez is struggling with high heat arm. He is.
I know.
This has been something that is like, it is obvious at this point, and they are attacking him, and he is just not making the adjustment right now.
Well, what made me really concerned, and they're definitely targeting him with the high heat, and you're right on that. But what made me really concerned was, I forget what game it was. It was maybe game 3. We had a report from either Ken Rosenthal or Tom Verducci, whoever it was, checking in, just saying, yeah, they were talking about it like Yordan was like tinkering with stuff, in the cage before the games, and then had a really bad cage session, which, dude, how do you have a bad
How does that even happen?
So then they hit again, like before the game. And I'm like, okay, if you're at the point in the World Series where you're like playing around with stuff, look, long term, of course, Yordan's going to be just fine, but he's like trying to micromanage right now and in fight or flight mode to try to find something that works. He's just really thrown off timing wise. He's caught in between. And I think that the high fastballs are kind of getting to him a little bit. Yeah. If that high fastball keeps beating you and keeps beating you and keeps beating you, you're going to cheat a little bit more for it. You cheat a little bit more for it. You got to make a decision earlier. When you got to make a decision earlier, you don't pick up the breaking balls as well. And now he's just caught in between. And It's surprising to see because we talk about Jordan as the, one of the most complete hitters in the game, and he is. No matter how he could strike out the rest of the at bats of this World Series, and he's still one of the most complete hitters in baseball. That shows you how miserably difficult this sport is, like how impossible baseball is, and why it sucks as a sport if you're playing it. Like, it is just so grueling. But it also shows you how good the Astros are. I mean, Jordan has not done anything, and they continue to produce. But yeah, I mean, they've kind of executed the scouting report perfectly on Jordan, and now I think it's really piling up on him mentally. And now I don't even know if he'd hit the hangers well. He's just really in between.
Ryan, you know who the sport seems easy for right now? Well, the Astros bullpen, but Yuli Gurriel, 38-year-old Yuli Gurriel, who struck out for the first time in his postseason career. We talk about, how Altuve, he racks up the records because they're always there. Bregman, always there. Yuli Gurriel has been always there, and this was his first strikeout. He went 1 for 3 again in yesterday's game, now hitting 347 with an 850 OPS. Like, when you have that level of production, when you have a guy like Jordan not hitting very well, Altuve not hitting very well, that's what makes this Astros team so good, is that they don't even need their stars to play well. They can call up a 26-year-old rookie who wasn't on top 30 prospect rankings at the beginning of the season, is 26 years old, in David Hensley, and have even him contribute. Like, the Astros are just so deep and so good. The Phillies need to be perfect to beat them, while the Astros need to be fine in order to win the World Series. Like, that's and what I saw at the beginning was that the Phillies, they were gaining this momentum where they almost were playing perfect, that they were averaging 7 runs per game at Citizens Bank Park. On the road, it seemed like it didn't matter who pitched, that they could hit. But if they run into some offensive lulls, it almost just seems like the series is over. So I guess my question is, before we get into game 6, or maybe this question leads into game 6, like, do you think that the series is over?
No, I don't think the series is over, because look, if we start off and the impossible happens and they get to Framber, but if in the first inning the Phillies have one of those rallies that we've seen them put together, so many times in this postseason, and they put up 3 runs and really punch them in the mouth, I mean, there's no telling what could happen. I would certainly think that the series is going to be over. I believe that the Astros will hold on in game 6. But this Phillies team has shown us enough that we have to say they still got a shot at it. It's going up against now if not the best team in baseball throughout the regular season, certainly the best team in the American League. And you have to face them after a day off where that bullpen's rested, and they still got Framber going. And who's going game 7 now? Is it going to be Javier? Are they going to go him on short west? Like, they have too much pitching to not pull this out, I think. And I also don't know what Wheeler's going to look like either. I think that's the big question mark going into this game here.
Aram, they could throw Luis Garcia as a joke, just like for fun.
Yeah.
That'd be disrespectful. But the thing is, Garcia's good. Like,
he is good.
That's the craziest part. I will say, the one thing is, we say, like, we don't know how Zach Wheeler is going to look. We feel like, it should be pretty good with the extra day of rest. I feel like we know what Framber Valdez is going to look like, and it's going to be pretty darn good. Like, I always look at these kinds of games, these series, and I'm like, anything can happen, right? Like, even the best of pitchers, can get touched up. But Framber Valdez is the one guy where I'm like, I don't know. Like, are they going to get to this dude? Like, I don't know, especially when you consider that their 2 best hitters for the Phillies are lefties right now, and Schwarber and Harper, who both, are competitive enough against lefties, but, Framber's a different beast. It's really hard to imagine, that they're going to be able to get Framber here. And really the only way that I can imagine it is the back half of the order stepping up. And that's where it gets really interesting. I just feel like you are almost guaranteed a quality start from Framber Valdez here, and that's tough. So that means Wheeler is going to really, really have to match that, or the Phillies are going to have to magically get to the Astros bullpen. And I was talking about it yesterday. Like, I think Dusty Baker, not to take away from anything that he's done, because I think the hardest part about his job, and one of the most important things that a manager can do in today's game, is manage the egos, manage the personalities, keep the clubhouse together. There's a lot of egos. There's a lot of, big time personalities in that Astros clubhouse, but, a manager kind of keeps those guys together. In terms of like game decisions, Dusty Baker has the easiest job in the world, because it's like, you could make the case for going to any reliever in any fucking spot. Like, it doesn't matter. You
No.
could go to any, if they put Brian Abreu into close, okay. Presley
Sure.
into close, okay. Montero into close, I don't care. Like,
Maris.
you could justify any of them in any spot. Like, go to any reliever. It's really not that difficult. Whereas Rob Thompson, like, you got to pick your spots. Alvarado in the 6th. When you go into Sir Anthony, how much are you stretching him out? Like, it's a little bit different. So trying to get to that bullpen is going to be really tough, as we've talked about. So who do you think they have a better chance to get to, Peter? Framber or the Astros bullpen? Like, that's the question. And that question in itself makes me feel like they're in trouble.
You couldn't be more right. I'm thinking to myself, well, Framber has pitched so well. Isn't he due to have a bad start? But then I think to myself, isn't this the same guy who set the quality start record? That even at his worst, he's 6 innings, 3 runs. Like, that's the worst Framber you're going to see. And in game 2, that's why I think this game is so dependent on the starting pitchers. Because at this point, like, we shower praise on the Astros bullpen, and deservedly so. But the Phillies bullpen has been right there. Like, we love the under for the reason that beyond Noah Syndergaard, if he just weathers the storm, the Astros aren't really going to hit the Phillies bullpen, and they didn't, and they haven't. So this is so dependent on, are we getting a healthy Zach Wheeler? So I'm writing up my betting article for Saturday's game because, of course, we're recording on Friday. There's no game today as they travel to Houston. But Zach Wheeler is the story here, right? Because he was 97 to 99 miles an hour. In game 2, where he threw 7 shutout innings against the Padres, his average fastball was 97.2 miles an hour, and his average sinker was 96.5. When he got blown up by the Astros, when he was leaving things middle, when his command was not there, his average fastball was 95.6. Average sinker was 94.8. And he was throwing the sinker much more than he was throwing his fastball like he normally does. But then Framber on the other side had absolutely 0 issues. He recorded 19 outs, 6 1/3 innings, 9 ground balls, 9 strikeouts, 1 fly ball. Like, it doesn't get better than that, especially for a Phillies offense that when they put up 7 runs against a guy like Lance McCullers Jr.,
called bombs.
They didn't put a runner in scoring position. John Smoltz said on the broadcast, and I think I said this in an earlier episode, but it just made me laugh, I was like, I don't have the stats here, but I think that's the record for runs scored in a World Series game without putting a runner on second base. Like, if you cannot put the ball in the air against Framber Valdez, how do they have a shot here? I might just bet the under again, but it is so dependent on, because now we have Zach Wheeler, 6 days worth of rest, right? He hasn't had that in the postseason so far. You never get that in the regular season. Like, he is the guy coming off a rough start, but now he gets that time to rest. But he's also coming off an IL stint that he had earlier in the season. So what version of Zach Wheeler are we going to get? I feel like we're all pretty confident of what version of Framber Valdez we're going to get. Right, Aram?
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the best case is you grind out Framber, which is tough because he pitches to early contact, and that's how he goes deep into games. Again, like, I think it's going to take a miracle of the back half of the lineup stepping up, because how many times are you going to see that maybe Bryce works the walk, and then maybe like gets to second base somehow, and then you got Bohm, Stott, Segura, like out. That's it. Like, I feel like that's how it's going to end up going down. But when you have a team that does all its damage in the air, and then you got to face Framber Valdez, it's literally your kryptonite here. The other side of it too is the defense is so good for the Astros that it just makes Framber the perfect arm for them. When you have Jeremy Pena, the human vacuum at shortstop, you have Bregman at third, who's been spectacular. Altuve's been still playing a good second base. And then, everything else has been working really well for them defensively. Of course, we saw the outfield. That's what makes it really, really advantageous to have a pitcher like Framber as well, which he can just pitch to contact, knows he's going to be just fine, and go from there. I want to give a quick shout out to David Hensley, 26 years old. You mentioned it, Peter, like not a top prospect whatsoever. Went into this year without really any expectations around him, raked in AAA, got an opportunity in the final month and a half of the season at the big league level, put up good numbers there, and somehow convinced them enough to put him on the postseason World Series roster. And here he is playing in the World Series. This was a guy that probably started his year in AAA hoping at best to make a big league debut. And here he is, one game away from getting a ring and playing a big part in it. That's freaking cool, especially for a team that's as loaded as the Astros. Pretty cool story there. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough, man.
David Hensley has a better batting average than Yordan Alvarez and Jose Altuve. If we said this at the beginning of the playoffs that David Hensley would have a better batting average than Yordan and Altuve, you would have said I was on crack. Ryan, so how do you think this game is going to go? Like, you have Astros in 6. I assume you're not going to go back on that prediction, but it just seems like there's so much up in the air for the Phillies. While I feel like, especially at home, we know what we're going to get from the Astros. Like, the line currently is out, right? The Astros are minus 145. The Phillies are about minus 150. The Phillies are about plus 130. Like, do you think, if you were a betting man and I'm writing up my article, do you think Phillies plus 130, which for people who aren't in the betting space, if you put $10, you win $13 on the Phillies, but you'd have to lay $15 only to win 10 on the Astros? Like, do you think that line makes sense here? Or do you think just lay the $15 with the Astros and say goodnight?
As a betting man, I would go Astros here. Now, the case that I would make, what I think has to happen for the Phillies to win, is that top of the order. If they can just scratch a run in the first inning, in the top of the first, and then if Wheeler looks like Wheeler from last series in the bottom half, then you might be like, all right, we got a shot here. Because I think we're going to know very quickly what version of Zach Wheeler we're going to get. If he looks fatigued, I mean, good night. There's just to cover all of those innings. I just don't see it. But if Zach Wheeler looks like, what we saw against the Padres, and that velo is back up after the extra rest, and they have an early lead on top of it that he can hold on to and try to get you through 6, even if it's 1-0 Phillies going into the late innings, then you got a chance. But look, I just, like we're talking about, I can't see them tagging Framber for a bunch of runs. It just doesn't. And then that bullpen, like, what are you going to get to? Like, maybe you can get to Montero. I don't know. It's just the Astros are too good. So, yeah, as far as if I'm telling you where to put your money, I can't advise anyone to put their money on the Phillies other than to say, like, team of destiny or whatever you want to say. But based on logic and reason, the Astros should win this game.
Aram, are you on the same page? Like, we didn't even touch really the money line of last game because we both thought, the Astros should win this game. It is Justin Verlander versus Noah Syndergaard, and the bats have kind of gotten cold for Philly. But do you, in a playoff game, do you want to lay minus 160? Like, in this kind of spot, I want to ask you the impossible question. What are we going to get from Zach Wheeler? Because according to Rob Thompson, he's confident that Zach Wheeler will be fully rested and ready to go. I quoted it in the article. Like, his actual quote is, I'm really confident he'll be able to go. Like, that's what Rob Thompson is saying about Zach Wheeler. But what is he going to say? We're not confident?
Yeah. So like, what is it? And also be ready to go. Oh, great. Okay. He's going. What does going mean? Like, how does going look? I just think that there's so many, like, kind of what Ryan said, it jogged a thought in my head. It was like, going through the scenarios here, the case for how the Phillies win, it's possible, but it just seems very difficult. It's, you get to, an extremely difficult Framber Valdez, at least for a couple of runs. And then the big question mark, Zach Wheeler, is going to shove. Like, that's how you win this game. And that's a tough parlay right there. To have those two things happen. It's possible. It's the postseason. It's the World Series. Anything can happen. But I think the odds pretty accurately reflect the likelihood of that happening. And it's tough. But here's the thing, man, is it takes one swing, right? If you can get one guy, and I think this is why they like Harper in the 4-hole. You get one guy on base ahead of Harper, and you get him up. One swing, 2-run lead. You hold on to that. I mean, we wouldn't be surprised if Wheeler into the bullpen can hold on to that, and you just hold on for dear life and empty the tank. I mean, it's possible, right? And I keep saying, like, the Phillies have a swinger's chance, but it's just going to be really tough for a guy that doesn't give up home runs. And maybe it's catching one out of the bullpen. We saw a little bit of vulnerability from Abreu. The command kind of waned on him a little bit. There was a couple pitches that could have been hit that weren't, including a Schwarber, roll over to second base. I thought that was a big spot there where they could have done something. JT Realmuto in that last inning, if McCormick doesn't make that catch, what are we looking at? Maybe there's an opportunity to tie it up there. So, there's little things here and there that could have swung it. So you never know. But this is the one thing. They've seen all of the Astros bullpen arms plenty now. So you hope that maybe at this point they have a little bit of an idea of what they can expect. Maybe they can cheat for one pitch and hope to catch it. That's really what it looks like here. And again, it's not impossible when you have a lineup like the Phillies do, but it's going to be very tough.
If you're looking at this game, that's why I said it is so dependent on the starting pitchers. Before last night's game, going into it, the first 5 innings over was 4-0. But the full game under was 3-1. There has been no scoring off of this bullpen either. And then when you look at last night's game, first 5 under hit, which is the first time in the series, and then the full game just went under very easily by a margin. So it was 5 runs total. The over-under was 7.5. That was an easy one. Like, I'm just kind of leaning towards the under again for this game. Just expecting that Framber is going to do Framber things. Like, at the worst, Framber allows 3 earned runs because that's what he proved during the regular season. Every single time he faced the Phillies, even in the postseason, but even back to the regular season where he threw 5 shutout innings of 10 strikeouts, 2 hits or no hits or something crazy like that. Like, that's where I'm leaning again. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game that's decided in the later innings. And, Ryan, even if Wheeler pitches really well, you assume Framber is going to pitch really well because why wouldn't you? So if this is 2-2 going into the 7th inning, you again give the lean to the home team and the better bullpen by the track record. Like, just seems like there's very few ways the Phillies can win this, but at the same time, Ryan, there was very few ways that the Phillies could even get here. That's why this World Series is so fascinating, and I just don't know what's going to happen. So let's talk about our predictions as we round out the pod. Ryan, give us your Game 6 prediction. And then once we do Game 6, we'll kind of preview what could happen in Game 7 if the Phillies win. But I think we're kind of all on the same page of who's going to win Game 6.
Yeah, we don't really think there's going to be a Game 7. If you get there, you got Ranger, right? So you never know. You feel a lot better about their chances in a Game 7 than a Game 6. Yeah, you do. Too, I feel like. So I would say Astros win 4-2.
Yeah. So let's say the line is at 7. You going under?
Yeah, I just think that. Well, then again, I just have no idea. It would not surprise me if Wheeler gives up like 5 runs in the first 2 innings, and then that looks like a bad bet. But
that would
I would take the under.
That would surprise me. Because even when he looked bad, he still gave you 5 innings, and it was 5 earned runs.
It's just if his arm's shot. I just don't know where he's at because it's a matter of. What did he lead the league in innings pitched last year? And then he goes like another long season. I mean, he doesn't have a history. This is the first time he's pitched in the playoffs of pitching into November. So it's just a matter of like, does Wheeler still have it in the tank? It's not a matter of if he's good enough. It's just, I don't know what he looks like on November 5th.
No, we gotta empty it. Empty the freaking tank, baby. Like, this is it.
Aram, we got a good comment here. Any long-term Astros fan, this is from Andrea LG89. Any long-term Astros fans knows it's never safe to unclench. Because, I mean, this is a team that has 1 World Series ring, and they seem to be there every single year. And the Phillies, they're playing with nothing to lose, right? They weren't supposed to be here. So the pressure will be on the Astros, which is a lot, right? You're at home. It's not a must win, but you know that looking forward to Game 7, you know that anything could happen. And the pitcher you're going to face in Game 7 already shut the door against you. So this is obviously a must win for the Phillies because if they lose, they go home. But it does feel like a must win for the Astros too, and maybe that pressure mounts. But do you think the pressure mounts enough for them to lose this game?
I just think the Astros, like, yes, they've had some disappointments, but they've been there. And you have the opportunity here where even if you lose, you do still get another game where they're at home. You figured that there's going to be pressure in that one, but you at least have that lifeline there that the Phillies don't have. I think it's going to be 4-1. And I just don't know if the Phillies bats are really going to quite get going. You could see a little bit of just how frustrated they were in that last game. I started to see it mount a little bit on these guys. Like you could see the body language after these at bats of like, man, we're just getting overpowered a little bit. I think they're up against it a little bit at this point. You know, they've been so hot, they've been riding it all the way here, and then all of a sudden you run into a juggernaut. And I think they're finally feeling a bit vulnerable offensively. And I think this is going to kind of mount on them here, especially now leaving Citizens Bank, going to Houston. That said, you know, again, anything can happen. Houston's a hitter-friendly place as well, especially in left field. It only takes one cheap homer that can get them where they need to go. I mean, remember Bregman's home run. So I still don't think so, though. I'm going to go 4-1. Astros win the World Series, and that's that. And we go full off-season mode by Sunday.
So my heart says that the Phillies have a shot here. My brain says that it's going to be 2-1 in favor of the Astros, them winning. But we also have another good comment, which I want to mention. The Nationals won game 6 and 7 in Houston. They were in the same spot. And we compare this team a ton to that 2019 Nationals team. So it's been done before, but at the same time, if we remember, the Astros faced the Red Sox. Red Sox went up 2-1. Astros won 3 straight. Now, that was not the World Series. That was in the ALCS. But they've both been in these type of scenarios. The Astros have blown it in game 6 and 7 in the World Series, but at the same time, they were also down 2-1 and then won out in order to win that series. So
I also think this is the best Astros team we've ever seen.
Like, can you talk to that a little bit, Aram? Because I agree with
Yeah.
you. I think this is the best Astros team that's ever been.
I really do. And Ethan Badowski, our guy, asked that in the chat yesterday, and like unequivocally, I was like, yes, this is absolutely the best Astros team we've seen. You could harp on like, oh, the drop off at shortstop, you lost Carlos Correa. Well, Jeremy Pena just plugged right in and giving you basically everything that Carlos Correa was giving you, especially in the postseason. Bregman's right back to prime Bregman form, which, you know, kind of offsets that. You have Altuve playing at his highest level. You have Kyle Tucker playing, you know, continuing to get better than he was on those other Astros teams. Yordan Alvarez, I know not great in the World Series, has turned into one of the best hitters in the game. He wasn't that, you know, before. He was really good, but wasn't that. And then the pitching staff, right? Sure, you lose Garrett Cole. Okay, replace him with Justin Verlander, a Hall of Famer. The rest of the staff is just way better. I mean, we were seeing innings from guys that don't sniff the ability of Christian Javier, Framber Valdez, and all the other guys that they're able to roll out there. And then the bullpen is not even close. Again, the stat that we keep throwing out there of every guy basically having a sub-4 ERA that's thrown for them this year, like that, they've never had that kind of depth. They've never had that kind of ridiculous depth that they have top to bottom. And then all of their core stars have kind of taken that leap in the meantime. This is the best team they've had without a doubt.
Kurt Money reminded me on TikTok, no Michael Brantley either. Remember him?
Yeah.
Remember how good he was? He could hit second in the lineup, just move Kyle Tucker down, move Yuli Gurriel to 7. I mean, they might have swept if they had Michael Brantley. Like, that's how good this team is, even without him losing one of their best players. And the Phillies at this point are fully healthy, except maybe Zach Wheeler. And I think that is the key here. Do we see vintage Zach Wheeler, who was throwing 99 miles an hour and threw 7 shutout innings with 1 hit against the Padres? Or do we see a forearm trouble arise with Zach Wheeler, who that was the injury that he dealt with, and we're seeing 94 to 95 without the command? I don't know what we're going to see, but let's play a hypothetical here. Zach Wheeler looks like the best pitcher alive again, because he was that way moving into this series. Let's say he dominates. Let's say Framber still is Framber, gives up 3 runs this time, still gets his quality start, but let's say he gives up 3 runs. If he gives up 3 runs and the Phillies win 3-2 and we move forward into game 7, who are we going to see for the Astros? Do we see Christian Javier on 3 days rest? I mean, it seems like to him, he's not even trying that hard. He's throwing a 94-mile-an-hour fastball with 75 inches of vertical induced vertical break, and it's impossible to hit, and then he just throws in a slider when he wants, and he'll throw in 2 knuckle curves just to say hello. Or do they go to Lance McCullers, who was, I guess, tipping pitches? Does he make that adjustment, look better like he did in innings 3 and 4? Or do they just go to Luis Garcia for fun? Like, Ryan, how do you see game 7 lining up if the Phillies are able to upset the Astros in game 6?
I'm not exactly sure what they do. I know I would go to Javier personally, but I could see them also starting with McCullers with a short leash and pitching Javier out of the bullpen. Like that's certainly kind of a realistic option if he can figure out why he was tipping pitches and how to correct it. McCullers could give you a better start, but again, it's just a matter of if we get there, and I just don't think we get there. If we do, though, look, like I said, I like the Phillies' chances in game 7 a lot more than game 6 with Ranger going and with kind of that uncertainty about what the Astros would do.
So for some reason, our TikTok comments are talking about Jose Urquidy being the guy. And it makes me laugh, but at the same time, he's been there. He's done that. And against the Phillies, he already performed very well. So I'm like making fun of you guys on TikTok, but at the end of the day, like if Jose Urquidy started against Ranger Suarez, the Astros might be favored. Like that's how good
they would, because I think Javier would piggyback, and then you go to the rest of the bullpen. So
which they can do.
I mean, yeah, you're probably fine. You just need Urquidy to give you 2 or 3, kind of like Syndergaard, and then you go with Javier piggybacking, and then you go to the elite bullpen. So I think it'd be just fine. I mean,
you could go 2-2-2.
Yeah, McCullers. I would probably stay away from McCullers, like, because I genuinely don't think he was tipping his pitches that much. I legitimately think the Phillies executed a game plan which was fairly obvious, right? Like, you let him beat you with the fastball. He was throwing breaking balls. Look at where all of those breaking balls were. They were middle hangers, and every guy was sitting on that pitch. Like, okay, if he was tipping pitches, you kind of know what he's going to throw. He threw 28 consecutive breaking balls. He has the record for most consecutive breaking balls. He might as well tell you it's coming. The difference is it's usually so good it doesn't matter. He was hanging those. He doesn't look right. I wouldn't put him in that spot. I would feel more comfortable going a couple innings of Urquidy and then or Garcia, and then piggyback, somebody like Javier after that, and then go to the bullpen. And McCullers has obviously been the one guy that the Phillies bats look just like they did before, and I don't think you want to give them that little glimmer of hope there.
I don't even know why we're not talking about Luis Garcia. Like, I would put Luis Garcia in instead of Jose Urquidy. I would go 3 innings of Javier, then I would go to Luis Garcia, and then give me Ryan Stanek, Hector Neris, Rafael Montero, Ryan Presley, and Brian Abreu. I mean, that is, how are you hitting that ever? I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the 1927 Yankees. How are you hitting that? But then on the same side, Ranger Suarez, Astros couldn't touch him.
Can he do it again?
All the starters, they couldn't touch him. I mean, what's to say he couldn't do it again? Have you ever seen a more relaxed pitcher on the mound than Ranger Suarez? I don't even think he realizes it's game 7. He's just out there chilling. The definition of chilling. We saw that when it came back to him on the ground ball. He flips it into his hand. Seems him and Christian Javier seem like they don't care that it's the World Series, that they're just playing in the backyard. It's incredible the poise both of these two guys have on the mound. And so if Rangers go in game 7, and then you still have a Phillies bullpen who I want to give them credit. The Astros bullpen is so good, but the Phillies bullpen is also not giving up a run outside of a Jose Alvarado misstep. Like, that is the key here. So it's impossible to tell, but you have to give the Astros the clear edge in winning the series. And the books greatly reflect that. But this all comes down to game 6. If the Phillies can, it's not a miracle, but Ryan, would it feel like a miracle if the Phillies win game 6?
Miracle is kind of selling them a little bit short, but I feel like this entire run is kind of miraculous. So I guess it's not that far off. I mean, the fact that they're in this position when none of us had them maybe even making it out of the wild card round, or very few had them getting past the Braves. They're in an incredible spot to win 2 games and win a World Series and shock the world. So I wouldn't count them out. I just also would not count on them.
We'll be back on Monday. Thank you all for listening to this episode of the Just Baseball Show. Be sure to use code October15. TikTok, I'm talking to you too. Use code October15 in order to get 15% off Just Baseball merch. That code is still live through the end of the World Series. Get yourself a hat. Get yourself a sweatshirt. Why not? How about the new athletic long sleeve? That's also available on our store. I'm out here rocking the Not Gambling Advice tee. And all I can say is the biggest compliment that we get back about the clothing is the material. Got to shout out our guy, Kendall McKee. Incredible material. And You get to rep a little bit of just baseball, and it helps out the podcast, helps out us, as well as our code for Manscaped is still live in the episode description. Use code JBShow for 20% off Manscaped. Get yourself right. Treat yourself. And is there anything else before we say goodbye, Aram? Anything else?
Just praying for Game 7.
Praying for Game 7. We will be back again on Monday to review the World Series. Hopefully we get a Game 7 because that's just better for baseball. And with that, thank you, everybody.